Look, I've analyzed over 1 million cold emails from SDRs, BDRs, and AEs, and I can tell you exactly why most reps are getting ghosted, while a small handful are booking 12 to 16 meetings every single month. I'm talking about the difference between the rep who's stressing about hitting quota and the reps who are consistently hitting 200% because they actually understand what makes prospects respond. So in this video, I'm breaking down the exact patterns I found that separate the top 1% of SDRs from everyone else who's just spinning their wheels, sending hundreds of emails into the void. So if you're tired of crafting personalized emails that get no replies, or you're stuck trying to figure out why your sequences aren't booking any meetings, keep watching. I'm going to show you exactly what the top performers are doing differently and how you can start implementing it today. So look, let me start with the biggest mistake I see literally every single day when I'm reviewing sequences from the reps I coach in Outbound OS. Number one is the personalization trap that everyone's fallen into. And I get it. Everyone on LinkedIn's telling you to personalize, personalize, personalize. So you're spending 10 minutes per prospect trying to find out they have a golden retriever named Max or they went to some random conference last month. You craft this personalized opening line, something like, "Hey Sarah, saw you posted about your team out in at Top Golf. Looked like a blast." And then crickets, nobody responds. So here's why it actually doesn't work. Your prospect does not give a fuck that you looked at their LinkedIn. They know you're just trying to butter them up before you pitch them something. It's surface level, it's obvious, and honestly, it's just kind of weird. So point is everyone is doing this now. Like, especially with AI tools that scrape LinkedIn and auto-generate lines, your personalized line looks exactly like 47 openers that they're getting every single week. So what this actually means is what moves the needle is relevance. You need to understand what's happening in their world right now. Not what they posted about last week, but what's actually keeping them up at night. What are their business priorities? What are the initiatives they're focused on? What pain are they dealing with in the day to day that you can actually solve? So instead of saying something generic like, "Hey John, saw you posted about attending SaaStar. Hope you had a great time." Every single person could send this. And if emails look like it's meant for everyone, people treat it that way. And that's why they often go to the spam. Most of the time, people lead with a personalized opener, but there's no real connection to the issues or business KPIs that you're trying to solve. So if you lead with something generic but not specific to pains, it's never going to resonate. The best emails actually lead with something that ties to a pain that you solve for. So instead of talking about they attended a random event, if I'm reaching out for Outbound OS, trying to offer my outbound consultant to help their team, I may say something like, "Hey John, I noticed company just opened a new EMEA office and you're hiring 15 reps in the next quarter based on your job postings." Suddenly, this is something that I can directly tie back to the issues that I solve for of how we're going to ramp these new reps and get them up to speed. So the most important thing is relevance shows you actually understand their world and have a reason to reach out to them. The worst emails with just generic personalization often get sub 40% open rates, and the standard is less than a 1% reply rate and a 10% positive reply rate, meaning you need to reach out to 1,000 people to just get one positive response. Versus the emails that I'm talking about focused on relevance, real pains, real KPIs. Some of my clients are getting 8 to 12% response rates with 25% positive reply rates on their sequences. So when you're thinking about how do I actually make this relevant, there's one thing that you should always think about is why would this person care? It's not about you. It's not about what you do. It's all about them. What are they trying to accomplish? What issues do they have in their day to day? What's happened in their world to make now a good time for you to come in and offer them potential support on an issue that they didn't even think about? And that's when people actually respond. When they realize that you actually understand what they're going through and you can help them, that's why it works. So in terms of a few little tactical ways you can actually start to do this and create a framework to find this research, step one is you can look for account-based triggers. So look at the company level. Are they expanding? Have they launched new products? Have they just received funding? Do they have open roles? This is something that's happening to the company, but you can tie to an issue that the person will be facing. Super important that we always make sure it's specific to the individual because ultimately we're reaching out to a person, not to a company. Step two is you can do it on the departmental level. So again, if I'm trying to sell to sales leaders, I may look at what's happening with the sales function specifically. Are they hiring? Have they gone through a restructure? Have they got a new initiative based on the new products that have come out? And step three is what pain does that create for this person specifically? So again, you really have to understand based on the individual's KPIs day to day, how does this event potentially negatively impact them? This takes sort of 3 to 5 minutes per account, but the beauty of doing this is you can build sequences that actually work. Instead of doing it personal for each prospect, you can create a sequence based on company level triggers. So whenever you see these triggers, you just push people into sequencing. But here's where it gets interesting. Like once you actually understand this process and you understand sequences can work, this is where everyone gets confused because everybody says that You should be doing manual emails. You don't need to use sequences, and AI is ruining everything. So let me clear this up for you because it's completely false. The key thing to remember is sequences still work if you're not lazy. So let me clear this up, and I'm going to be pretty blunt. Most people are saying sequences don't work because they're just terrible at writing sequences. The whole sequences are dead is just a complete myth. You've probably seen the post about emails not working, or everyone's using AI, or the sequences are just terrible to use, and you have to do videos, you have to do GIFs. Look, I get why people think that. Is there more competition? Yes. Is there more AI? Yes. But that also means there's a bigger chance for you to actually differentiate yourself from the competition. Prospects are more guarded than ever with the amount of outreach they're getting. But here's the reality check. I'm working with hundreds of clients right now, from SDRs, AEs, BDRs across SMB, mid-market, enterprise, from Series A companies all the way to 1,500 employee massive enterprises. And all of them are booking dozens of meetings every single month by using sequences. I'm not just talking about a few meetings, I'm talking about 12, 15, 20 meetings every single month with the same old boring sequences that everybody's saying don't work. So, what's the difference from these reps who are crushing quota every month and the ones who don't even think email works? The difference is the sequences are actually good. They're relevant. Thinking back to point number one, they call out a specific issue that that person will be facing in their day to day. They have a clear reason to reach out, and they answer the most important question that any prospect thinks, which is, why is this person reaching out to me? But there are three different types of why questions that every sequence has to answer to actually get responses. Number one is, why are you reaching out to me? This is the most important part because this is the first line of the email. And again, if it looks like it's for that individual, the chance of them opening and reading is much higher. The second thing is, why should they care? What's in it for them? People always think about, how does this benefit me in my day to day? One of the biggest issues I see reps fall into is they talk about generic pains, about revenue and saving time when it doesn't relate to the individual. Think, how do you make their life easier? And the third part is, why now? Why does this matter today and not in 6 months? Most deals are completely lost to status quo. It's not about competitors, it's not about other solutions. People just opt to stay the same. So you have to show what happens if they don't fix this. And if you can't answer all of these three questions clearly, your sequence is going to flop. And that's why random spray and pray just doesn't work in 2025, because there's no why and it doesn't answer these three core points. So when you're thinking about how to actually orchestrate a sequence, there's a few core things that you have to consider. Number one is, are you using different channels? If you're doing multi-channel with emails, calls, and LinkedIn, all of these platforms can link together. But for this example, I'm just going to talk about an email only sequence and the first three emails and how you can think to start to structure it. So number one is email one, and this goes out on day one. This is where we'd use something like the tips framework that we teach in Outbound OS. There's videos on my channel talking about this, but the core principle is to have a clear why. Why are you reaching out to them? Why should they care? What happens if nothing changes? So why now? This email is all focused on them. It has relevant social proof, a trigger, pain, cost of inaction, and it's really focused on their world and what makes sense for them. The second email would come on day three, and this is where we give value as a follow-up. So instead of just giving something like, just bumping this up, or did you have a chance to read my email, I'm going to actually give value to help the person try and solve their issue. So going back to the example from earlier of a company opening a new office in EMEA, instead of just saying something like, did you have a chance to read the email, I'm going to say something like, hey John, given you've opened the new office in EMEA, I thought this could be worth a read. It's a quick article from Gong's CEO where they're talking about how they expanded from North America to EMEA and built a successful function in 3 months. Given you opened the office, thought it could be useful. P.S. Any thoughts on the last email? And the goal of this is to give genuine value. This is an article from a third-party resource that if the prospect looks into, they'll actually get value from. And this positions you as a consultant and a peer instead of a desperate salesperson just trying to follow up for no reason. Then email three would come on day seven, and this would be something like a case study to add credibility to our outreach. So this would look something like, hey John, given there's a focus on ramping the new reps you're hiring in EMEA, thought this could be worth a chat. Here's a quick breakdown of how we helped Acme ramp their 72 new hires in less than 2 months using our outbound consultant. Think this could be worth a chat. And the goal of this is we would link the case study so the prospect can understand what you do specifically, and it adds credibility to the previous emails to add more value. The core thing to understand when you're writing emails is all of your messaging needs a structure. You need to use multiple touches because people are busy. They may not see email one or two, and that's why you have to have follow-ups that give genuine value. Email three may hit them at the perfect time when they're actually looking through their inbox, thinking about the problem you solve. And this is why one-off emails don't work. You're leaving so much on the table, and there's a common stat that most replies come after email 4. Therefore, don't send one and give up. Create a sequence focused on value and giving them structure. So when you're creating emails and sequences, keep in mind that you don't need 42 different templates or tons of different messages. You need to have a structure and a framework that's focused on the core points that we've mentioned earlier. So your initial email should focus on why you're reaching out to them, why should they care, why should they focus on this now? Your follow-up email should give value and position you as a peer and a consultant, not a desperate salesperson. But some of the most common mistakes that I'm seeing that kill sequences appear every single day when I'm coaching reps one-to-one in Outbound OS. Now, mistake number one is every email just says the same thing in a different way. Your follow-ups and as you orchestrate a sequence should be focused on multiple different pains. So the first 3 emails can be focused on one core issue. In my example, as I was talking about ramp time, but the second thread is focused on a different issue and a different angle. You don't know what's going to be relevant to them. And I always say this to my clients, but outbound is your best bad guess. You have to touch on multiple issues to try to figure out what makes sense for them. The second mistake is there's no clear CTA, or every CTA is hyper aggressive, like, do you want to hop on a 35-minute chat? So the biggest mistake I see here is reps think that they can just create a good email focused on pains and then prospects will be begging to book a call with them. That's not how it works. Every single email has to have a call to action to direct them back to giving you a response. The goal of cold email is to get a response from the prospect. It's not to book a meeting straight away. It's not to get someone on a 30-minute sales call. It's to get a response. So when we structure call to actions, think about what is most likely to get a response. This is why things like worth a chat. Any thoughts on this? If we could help you ramp your reps faster, would that be worth exploring? Work extremely well, especially in 2025 and 2026, because it's focused on starting a conversation instead of booking a meeting. Think about what's going to be easy for your prospect to respond to, and that is what your call to action should look like. Mistake number 3 is the sequence is all about you and your product, not them and their problems. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see when I'm coaching reps is they think their product is the best thing ever. And if they talk about their features, that's going to equate to giving the prospect more value. It couldn't be more wrong. Your features and your product only have value when they solve an issue for a prospect. For example, a bandage or a band-aid that covers a cut isn't useful. And unless you have a deep enough cut that's bleeding, if I just walked up to you and offered you a band-aid, you'd probably look at me like I'm crazy and have some choice words to say. Then if I pointed out you had a tiny paper cut on your thigh and offered you a band-aid, you may think, yes, I have a cut, but I'm fine. I can just leave it. Nothing's going to happen. But then if I pointed out you have a tiny cut on your thigh, but it's over your femoral artery, and if you don't apply pressure, you're going to bleed to death in the next 2 minutes. Do you want a bandage to apply pressure so you don't die? Suddenly the bandage is valuable and you probably pay whatever, right? Again, of course, we're not solving that issue when we're prospecting in cold emails, but that's the thought process is don't offer a feature. Don't call out a surface level issue and then offer a feature. What you should be doing is call out a surface level issue, show the impact of that issue to their KPIs, and then offer our features as the solution for them. Now, everything I just said applies across the board, but if you're selling to enterprise, then man, you need to level up your game even more because the research and effort qualified is completely different. And most reps just aren't willing to do the work or understand how they actually do it. So let me move into how this actually works for enterprise. Oh, and by the way, cool, if you're sitting here thinking, man, I actually need some help building out this stuff. We've put together the exact system that I've talked about in the Outbound OS. It's our process, what we call Cold Email OS, which is the cold email operating system. It's literally the same frameworks that I use to average 138%, help over 350 reps hit there. So there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. But let me keep going because this next part about enterprise is so important. Now, this is going to sound obvious, but I do need to say it because most reps don't actually act on it. Enterprise takes way more time and effort than SMB or mid-market. You can't skim through a LinkedIn profile for 30 seconds and think you're ready to reach out. That might work for a 10-person startup where your TAM and total market is thousands of accounts. But when you're going after Fortune 500 companies, you have a list of 10 accounts at 10,000 person enterprise companies, that won't give you a chance. So what most SDRs do wrong is they see a big name. Let's say they're trying to break into Salesforce. They'll find a VP on LinkedIn and they send some generic email talking about what their product does, like we help other companies to, and start talking about features. And then they wonder why they get ghosted and don't break into any big accounts. The bigger the company, the more noise that executive is going to be dealing with. What this means is there's more outreach every single day to the big companies because everybody wants to work with them. They have more money, so they're getting more outreach reach. And a key thing to remember is one phrase that I was taught early in my career, which is if you don't stand out from the noise, you become it. How do you differentiate yourself from the thousand other people that are sending them cold emails? That is what we need to do. And this is what we're going to move into. So when you're doing enterprise research, you have to go deep, like actually deep. So I'm talking about reading 10K reports, earning calls transcripts, podcasts from the CEO. You're understanding the strategic initiatives at the organizational level. You have to understand like what are the growth priorities, where are they investing, where are they trying to go as a company, and you have to position your solution as a way for them to hit these key initiatives. In Outbound OS, we've created a prompt that does deep research for you. But again, just as a starter, you can go onto a platform like Claude and create a prompt where you input the company name and you say, look through the company's 10K reports, find me the key initiatives that this company's focused on. Again, if you do want to join Outbound OS, we could go way more in depth than that, but this will give you a high level overview. And the reason this is so important is at the enterprise level, there's 1,000 things they could focus on. But if you position your solution as a way for them to hit the goals they're already aiming for, suddenly it makes a lot more sense for them to respond. So you're not going to be able to book 20 enterprise meetings a month. Obviously, that's just not very realistic. But what you can do is be like my client David, where he's been able to book 6 multi-billion-dollar companies and source deals that are worth 100, 250, even sometimes $1 million in value. So would you rather book like 20 meetings that are going to go nowhere with low level execs, or book 10 meetings with actual VPs that are going to turn into 6-figure deals? That's the enterprise trade-off. It takes more time, but it's worth it because the deals are so much bigger. The harsh truth for enterprises, if you're not willing to spend the time to do the deep research, understand the goals of the company, and position your solution as a way for them to get there, you're never going to get there, and you should probably focus on SMB, where the research is going to be lighter, and we're going to focus on more general triggers where we can reach out to a lot of people. There's no shame in that, but you can't just half-ass enterprise and then complain it doesn't work. Enterprise requires a completely different mindset. So again, how to think about this is if you're doing SMB, there's much more accounts for you to reach out to. That's why we can be more general and focus on research, things like job changes, where it can apply to hundreds of companies at once because there's more prospects for you to reach out. As we go up market and reach out to bigger companies, naturally there's less big companies. So we have to be more specific with the research and figure out relevant things that only apply to that company. So when they receive the email, it doesn't make sense for any other company apart from them. That's the difference between SMB and mid-market and even enterprise going after strategic accounts. All right, so you've nailed the relevancy piece, you've built a solid sequence, you've done the deep research, but there's one more thing that separates reps who actually crush it from the ones who are leaving tons of money on the table and often missing their quota. And it's all in how you follow up. So let me break this down because most people completely screw this up. They either give up too early or they spam people with generic follow-ups, and neither of them work. So there's a stat that should change how you think about outbound. And as I said earlier, most meetings get booked on touches 3 to 5, not touch 1. Now think about that for a second. If you're giving up after 1 or 2 emails, you're leaving the majority of your potential meetings on the table completely intact. But most SDRs either give up way too early or they send way too many terrible follow-ups. So let me talk about the key mistakes and how you should actually do follow-ups in your cold emails. Mistake number 1 is reps are just giving up too soon. They say things like, I sent 2 emails and got nothing, so I guess they're not interested. Bro, they probably didn't even see your first email. Their inbox is a war zone with thousands of messages in there. You need multiple touches to actually break through the noise. Again, what we don't want to do is spam the prospect with 7 generic emails, but you do have to understand that these people are busy. Their job is to not respond to salespeople every single day. They're managing teams, dealing with pains, putting out fires in their day to day. So you have to stay top of mind and reach out multiple times to actually break through the noise. The second mistake is that most follow-ups are just lazy or annoying. Things like just bumping this to the top of your inbox, circling back on this, following up on my previous email. These are all useless as you're adding no value and you're just being annoying. What we don't want to do is follow up for the sake of following up. With every single message, think about if I was the prospect, would this message by itself actually make sense? And if it doesn't, then don't send it. So what actually makes a good follow-up? The key thing, as I've just said, is every follow-up needs to stand alone, meaning that if they read that email and none of your previous ones, it should still make sense and have context as to why you're reaching out. With all of your different follow-ups, it should add context, value, or a new angle that they haven't even thought about before. And each follow-up is almost like a mini first email, just a little bit shorter and trying to get them back to reading the first email. So there's three types of valuable follow-ups that you can think about when actually creating your sequences. Type one is called the value add follow-up. This is where you're sharing something relevant like a case study, a stat, an insight, a blog that the prospect can actually use to make it easier in their life. For example, when I did my email sequence earlier, what I referenced was giving them a third-party resource of how a company like them solved the issue that they're likely to face. The key thing to remember is if you're using articles, try to use third-party articles from other big names in your space. For example, when I'm prospecting for Outbound OS, I'm not going to use my own resources as that's obviously biased. I'm going to use resources from Gong, from HubSpot that are talking about sales stats that back up the points I'm talking about in my first email. So for example, if I'm talking about the issue with struggling to ramp new reps, I may find an article from Gong talking about how to ramp new reps and offer that as a free resource for the prospect. As I said earlier, the goal is to come across as a consultant and a peer, not a desperate salesperson just following up for the sake of it. Type two is what we call the context ad. And this is where you make sure to actually give context when you're bumping the email up in their sequence. One of the most common used emails in all of Outbound is any thoughts on the above. The reason I hate this email is that when a prospect opens their inbox and just sees any thoughts, they're left with more questions than answers. They're thinking, why did this person reach out to me? Who is this person? What do they want? And it creates more confusion, which is most likely going to get you in the spam folder or get your email completely deleted. What we want to do with the second type is always reference back to the trigger that we used in the first email. So for example, we would say something like, hey, John, given you've opened the new office in EMEA, I thought this could be worth a chat. Any thoughts on the last email? So now when they see this email in their inbox, the preview text is the trigger and the reason we're reaching out, which is way more relevant than anything else we could have done. The third type is how we actually break up from a prospect in a sequence. Now, I am not a big fan of generic breakup emails where it says things like, hey, guessing this isn't a priority, I'll reach out. You just sound like a desperate guy in the DMs. What we want to do when we're doing a breakup email is instead try to get a referral. I often refer to this as the Hail Mary, and a last-ditch attempt to try figure out who is the right person that I should be talking to. So what this email would look like is, hey Sarah, assuming this isn't a focus right now, was trying to reach out because I saw you open the new EMEA office. Let me know if there's somebody better to reach out to. Thanks. The goal of this is, number one, if it is their focus and it is in their job role, the likelihood they'll respond is much higher because you're offering that you're going to reach out to other people. So they'll be like, oh yes, actually I do focus on this, blah, 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 and give you a response. The second benefit, which most people don't even think about, is you may get a referral. People opt for the path of least resistance. If they can pass it off to someone else and say, oh, actually, yes, Sarah would be the best person to reach out to, they're going to do that. So then you have the right person to reach out to send an email to, or give them a cold call. Now, the key thing is persistence is creating value. That's good. That's what we want to do. But persistence with repetition of just saying the same thing again and again, that's just annoying spam. And that's why you get blocked and people don't give you a response. So if every follow-up is just saying the exact same thing again and again, you're just being annoying. Versus if every follow-up is providing genuine value, as in a resource, a different angle or context, that's how you're being persistent in a good way. The reason most reps really struggle with this is they've never been taught what good looks like. It actually takes a lot of effort to craft good follow-ups. It's easier to just hit send on a bumping this up email than it is to actually think about the context and why this prospect should respond. But easy doesn't equate to meetings booked. The reps who take time to actually understand, how can I find resources that are going to help this prospect? How can I create an angle that they haven't thought about? Those are the reps who are consistently hitting quota and booking dozens of meetings. So again, when you're doing follow-ups, don't view them as reminders or things you have to do. View them as an opportunity to create new meetings and provide value to the prospect. Each follow-up is a chance to give them a reason to engage and give them a reason to respond to you. If they don't respond to email one, maybe they need to see it from a different angle, because again, we don't know what's going on in their world, and that's what your follow-ups do. They're going to give them different angles and more context as to why this should be a focus for them. So yeah, that's actually what's working right now with cold email. And if you apply this stuff, you're going to see way better results than just doing the same old spray and pray bullshit that everyone else is doing. But look, if you want the exact cold email operating system that we use, so the sequences, the frameworks, the step-by-step process for doing all of this, that's exactly what we do in Outbound OS. If you're an SDR, a BDR, and an AE selling software, we're going to guarantee you book at least 50% more meetings in the next 60 days, or we literally just give you a refund and won't give you for free until you get there. So we've done it for over 350 reps, works across every segment from SMB, mid-market, enterprise. Like I did it, we've done it for these reps, and people are booking meetings within the first week of launching their sequences. So if you're tired of like inconsistent results and you just want a proven system to actually start booking more meetings, book a call with us. The link is below this video. And again, I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.